The implosion of Governor Kristi Noem should be a case study for all politicians and, quite frankly, human beings on what not to do if you want people to like, believe, or even so much as tolerate your presence. A cautionary tale of narcissism and insatiable power and money hunger. Let's get into it. With each passing day and each passing interview, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem just becomes more and more insufferable. It's like a car crash that you just can't look away from, but the weirdest part about it is Kristi is driving the car and she is seemingly crashing it, maybe intentionally, maybe for fun, but most likely for money and for attention. If you thought the passage in her book wherein she bragged about killing her puppy was bad, well, there's more, a lot more, all bad, all cringeworthy. Not only did she brag about killing her puppy and killing her goat, she also took to social media to smooth it over by bragging about recently killing some horses too. And there's more. Apparently, at the end of her book, aptly titled No Going Back, she also suggested that Joe Biden's dog Commander perhaps ought to meet the same fate as her little cricket.
You talk multiple times about it. In fact, at the end of the book, you say the very first thing you would do if you got to the White House that was different from Joe Biden is you'd make sure Joe Biden's dog was nowhere on the grounds. Commander, say hello to cricket. Are you doing this to try to look tough? Do you still think that you have a shot at being a VP?
Well, number one, Joe Biden's dog has attacked 24 Secret Service people. So how many people is enough people to be attacked and dangerously hurt before you make a decision on a dog and what to do with it?
Well, he's not living at the White House
That's
anymore.
the question that the president should be held accountable to.
You're saying he should be shot?
That's what the president should be accountable to, is what is the number?
Now, Kristi is pretty socially unaware and tone deaf, but even she knows this story is pretty bad for her, so now she's attempting to rewrite it. Cricket went from an overly playful, poorly trained hunting dog who got a hold of the neighbor's chickens to a vicious and beastly animal who terrorized the countryside. Oh, please.
Now, what happens if you are debating Kamala Harris and she says, well, wait a second, you shot your dog and you wrote a book about it, bragging about it. How can you be vice president?
You know, that story was a choice as a mom. The safety of my children versus a dangerous dog that was killing livestock and attacking people. So this book that I've written is full of stories of my past, hard decisions, and I told the truth. And I think that's very different than a lot of politicians that we have today.
So I get that some people don't mind that she killed her puppy. That's a bridge not too far for some, and okay, noted. But how about lying about meeting a foreign dictator and then when asked about it, saying she's not going to talk about it even though her ghostwriter wrote about it?
Did you meet Kim Jong-un?
Well, you know, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this passage. And I've met with many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits. I'm not going to talk about my specific meetings with world leaders. I'm just not going to do that. This anecdote shouldn't have been in the book. And as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made sure that that was adjusted. So.
Okay, so your book talks about meeting a world leader you didn't meet, but now you don't talk about the world leaders you've met? Okie dokie, we got it. Well, Kristi should have the good enough sense to pause her media tour given how badly it's going. Like when Dick Cheney accidentally shot that guy while he was hunting, you know, he just laid low for a bit and it blew over. He didn't go talk to every Tom, Dick, and Harry and brag about it. But Kristi is just so power and money hungry. She doesn't care if she's digging herself a bigger hole. She wants to sell books and Texas veneers and sneaker inserts, so she just keeps it up. And now she's decided that she is the victim. Roll it.
So I'm proud of him about how tough he is and how well he is doing.
Did you bring up the dog?
Yes, enough, Stuart.
Did you
this
bring up the
interview
dog
is
with Trump?
ridiculous, what you were doing right now.
I don't
so
think
you
so.
need to stop. It is.
Okay.
It is.
We'll
Let's
stop.
talk about some real topics that Americans care about.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
Oh, well, of course we are.
We do thank you for being with us.
All right.
I know I pressed hard, but that's what people are talking about to this day.
Yeah.
Justice for Stewart. Protect Stuart Varney at all costs. You know, that woman right there is morphing into Hillary Clinton before our very eyes. And folks, some of you don't understand why I'm going so hard in the paint on this, so let me tell you exactly why. This is not just a bad look for her and for South Dakota. It's a bad look for Trump, and I don't want her clawing Trump down with her. He doesn't need it. It's not helpful, and it's bad, 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 bad for the movement. Okay, I'm done and I'm off my soapbox now, so thank you for listening. Let's move on. On to this, the intersection between pro-terrorists and the war on cops. Again, let me repeat how impressed I am with the law enforcement officers who have had to deal with these feral campus terrorists. I can't imagine what it looks and smells like to be in the midst of it all. But I am just a wee bit jealous that some of you got to witness this parade of nerds firsthand. Oh, looky, it's the leftist army LARPing for oppression. If this is what we're up against, well, I like our chances. But jokes aside, law enforcement officers in America are facing a real crisis. Not only are they being told to stand down and derelict their duty to enforce the law, they're being ambushed and massacred with heartbreaking frequency. Joining me now to weigh in on it all ahead of Police Week is founder and CEO of the Wounded Blue, Randy Sutton. Randy, I always have so much to talk to you about, but I got to start now with what's been engulfing our college campuses. Now, we know that a lot of these young people, when they're not talking about being pro-terrorist, they're also BLM to fund the police. I mean, it's really a cross-section of these people who are the same people that protest pretty much everything decent and respectful in America. But there has been here and there, and I've heard murmurings of, why aren't the police doing more? And, you know, they were called in, they need to protect the Jewish students. And I feel like in some places, Portland, UCLA, it's been falling on the police. Like, why aren't they doing something? As if the police don't want to be doing something. Can you help me kind of dive into the perception of that and maybe the reality as you see it?
Well, I sure can. I've talked to a number of police officers who have been on the line in various places throughout the country, and they feel hamstrung by the leadership of not only the agencies but the leadership of these colleges and city institutions, where basically they're told to stand down until it gets so bad that they send the police in to clean up the mess, as always. But who's bearing the brunt of it? It is the cops who are standing in the line, and they're being goaded, they're being insulted, they're being pelted with objects, and it's almost like we are re-experiencing the microcosm that took place in Portland, but now it's happening all over the country in campuses and institutions of, I hate to use this word, higher learning,
right,
because it's pretty clear they're not learning anything.
Right.
But it's the opposite, and they feel very, very frustrated. And once again, you know, they have to use such incredible restraint because of the orders that they're getting. You let the police be the police, and this is over. But
right,
it's not happening. And of course, the acquiescence of the leadership of these college campuses is astounding, that the adults are no longer in the room. I mean, I saw a Jewish student talking the other day saying that the inmates are running the asylum, and that is about as accurate a statement as could be.
It's really sad when you want to call in a law enforcement officer, but then the officers are saying, hey, listen, we can't do anything until the university calls us in. There's also been some criticism by certain members of Congress that, oh, when the NYPD came into Columbia, they looked militant. And they came in. It's like, well, you let it get so bad. Of course they have to come in and give the appearance of maybe a militant look, because look what you guys are doing. First of all, you're praising and hailing terrorist networks. That's also a concern. Why we have counterterrorism, sections of NYPD coming in, well, because you're praising terrorism. But then also they have to come in because you guys have set up encampments. You guys have barricaded yourself in buildings. You've vandalized, you've destroyed. So that militant response is what you're going to get, because these officers have to be able to come in and restore some order. But, what do you make of that criticism of, oh, these officers are coming in, some of them have pepper spray, they're not using restraint. I believe they're using incredible restraint. But the optics of it, do you think that they're doing what they need to do?
Well, you know what? When they talk about this is one of the things that drives me insane, that the militarization of the police. They're wearing protective gear. That protective gear is there to alleviate at least some of the injuries that they're going to be sustaining from the objects being thrown at them. They're being pepper sprayed by these quote activists, unquote. And they are, I mean, officers are being assaulted. You know, the last year, more than 60,000 cops were physically assaulted in the line of duty. And that's all over the country. Well, now you add on to all of this unrest where these entitled punks are being given the opportunity to basically act out any way they want without consequences. And you and I have seen that when you have no consequences, you just see the disparity that takes place from prior events to now. We see what's happening, and it is literally empowering them to continue their assaults, both physical, verbal, etc. Now, the police officers who are being put on the line here are using amazing restraint in every category here. But if the leadership of these institutions had used something called preventative measures, then you won't have to call in the militarized police to clean up the mess. Once you have this encampment, you have people that, and believe me, it is. I'm actually shocked that we haven't had somebody seriously injured on the law enforcement side yet, because these people are being well funded. We all know who the bad guys are here. We all know that George Soros is writing these checks and gleefully grinning as he's watching his masterful play at work. He has clearly been behind the curtain here of unrest across the nation, beginning with the Ferguson incident, and then the George Floyd debacle, which tore this country apart. And if you look at what all these incidents have in common, and all of this common unrest that is very well coordinated, there are puppet masters at work, and he's one of them. And yet, instead of investigating him like the FBI and DOJ should be doing, you look at the log at the White House and you see George Soros visiting our president on numerous occasions. So the fox is in the hen house, Tommy, and until cooler heads are in office where they will allow law enforcement to actually do what law enforcement is supposed to do, we're going to continue to see this uprising continue.
As far as what's going on in the world of law enforcement and policing right now, I feel like there's a lot of different elements. There's the media demonization that has been there, and it really kicked off in 2020, I'd say, to a level that we hadn't really seen before. That was when there's been a war on cops. As you mentioned, Ferguson kind of initially kicked it off, but nothing like we saw in 2020.
Right.
And then you also have, as you mentioned, these Soros-funded DAs, where the officers, even if they are able to go in and do something, I can't imagine what it's like to arrest somebody and then know that they're out hours later and then rearrest. I mean, at some point, it's just futile, their mission. And it's obviously worse, and much worse, in liberal places, New York City, Los Angeles, Portland, places across the country that have decided that that's the way that they want to move. Illinois being a cashless bail state. But if you were to pinpoint the thing that you've heard from officers around the country that is the most damaging to their morale and their ability to work, what would you say that one thing is? Persecution
by prosecution, without a shadow of a doubt. Every officer is literally living in fear of that 15 seconds of videotape that captures them utilizing force in some way that doesn't look good, as no physical force can ever look good. Right. But what we are seeing is, and you categorize it correctly, you have these radical district attorneys. I call them Trojan horse district attorneys. They've been voted into office, and now they are ensconced in more than 60 jurisdictions around the country, and they actively take action to prosecute police officers and not prosecute bad guys. And we are seeing illegitimate prosecutions. There's one taking place in Minnesota right now, where a trooper is being tried for murder. for a legitimate shooting, and I'll illustrate with how this is playing out. So this trooper was already investigated and cleared of the shooting. Well, that's not good enough for the district attorney up there. She decided that she wanted to prosecute him anyway, so hired an expert, and this expert happens to be a very close friend of mine who is truly an expert in use of force. Well, he did the report and he told her, this is a good shoot. You should not be prosecuting. So she fired him. They brought in another expert who I'm also acquainted with, who is an expert, and they said, this is a good shoot. The third expert, they finally paid the guy enough money to come up with the conclusion that they wanted, and that's what they're hanging their hat on, to prosecute this guy who did nothing wrong. And this is happening across the nation. And of course, every police officer knows that that's the end of their career. They're
and
literally
really their life. I mean, it's really their
yes,
life.
yeah.
It's one thing to lose your career, which is bad enough, but some of these officers that have been irreparably damaged in the court of, even in the court of public opinion, their lives are pretty much over.
Yes.
And, you know, what do they have if not for their reputation, their character, which is being called into question falsely, erroneously, and purposefully? I can't imagine why anybody would want to do that job. We know that the retirement rates are skyrocketing. We know that people are not entering the police force. They have a hard time retaining officers. One of the talking points from the left that I get really tired of hearing from Karine Jean-Pierre and others as it relates to not only police officers but Border Patrol officers is, well, we're trying to get more Border Patrol officers. We're trying to get more law enforcement officers. If the Republicans would just give us more money, we could hire more.
Yeah.
And I often say, yeah, but who are you going to hire? Because who wants to do this job? You know, first of all, the pay's already low, the hours are already awful, it's already dangerous, and then you take all these other considerations into the fold. When you talk to officers that are still doing the job, why are they even still doing it?
Well, you've hit it right on the head, but this is all part of the process that the left has put into place. This is not happening by accident. The entire attempt to dismantle the criminal justice system as we know it is part of the plan. And how do you do that? Exactly what they're doing. You demoralize, you dehumanize these men and women who are legitimately the only ones putting their lives on the line for the communities that the left is saying that they're demonizing. It is outrageous. It is destroying the very fabric of our nation. And what we are seeing is the delegitimization of law enforcement. And this is part of the left's plan. And I got to say, they're executing it brilliantly, because we are seeing that there's been a sea change in the respect level of law enforcement. Although I am seeing signs, Tommy, I am seeing signs that Americans are beginning to get a little tired of this, and the curtain is being pulled away. And I think a lot of Americans are finally saying, enough is enough. I mean, I'm starting to see a little bit of a shift coming. In fact, I actually have a new book coming out in a couple months all about this, and it's called Rescuing 911, The Fight for America's Safety, which I will send you a copy when it comes out. But because we have to shed light on what the left's plan is so that the silent majority can remain silent no longer.
So I want to pick up where you left off on that. A couple things. I think that you're right about people changing their mind, at least from 2020, having more respect and appreciation for law enforcement because they realize how lawless things have gotten. But I worry it just takes one more incident, one more little overblown media incident, like another George Floyd or Alton Sterling, and all of a sudden, all that goodwill that's been built up, it dissipates overnight, and then we're back to where we were in 2020. But I also want to ask you, when you talk about the left's plan, what do you think the goal is? Because right now, Americans are not happy with the crime crisis in their cities. Even the most leftist, liberal ones, they don't like the carjackings, they don't like the violence, they don't like the cashless bail. It's not working. So you'd think that the Democrats that are making these policies might have, maybe at least for political reasons alone, a change of heart. Maybe reverse course a little bit. Say, hey, this isn't working. We have lawlessness. It's at least not even polling well. Whether they care about people in the country, that's another discussion. But why do you think they're doing it? What do you think is the end goal of the radical DAs, the demoralization of law enforcement officers, defund the police? What do they really want?
They want the dismantling of America. they legitimately they are trying to tear the fabric of this nation apart. Remember, they're demonizing the most brilliant document in American history, and that, of course, is the Constitution of the United States of America. And that is like the enemy document. They want to destroy that. They want to destroy the credibility of the Constitution. How do you do that? Well, if you dismantle law enforcement is the fabric of this nation. That's what holds this country together. And if you destroy that part of our community, of our nation, then you have lawlessness, you have unrest, you have people who are legitimately in fear. I mean, I've talked to some folks. I have contacts all over the country, both in law enforcement and of course, in the world. And I got to tell you, the fear that I hear in the voices of people in like Oakland, San Francisco, New York City is astounding. And the permeation of that fear really has a long-lasting effect on America. And when people don't listen, if they feel that the cops can't protect themselves, how on God's name can they protect the people? And so this dismantling of criminal justice system from within is really having a very detrimental effect on the nation.
Well, you brought up fear, and I think that really is the end goal, because when you instill fear in people, you can also take control. I think COVID was a test run of that. I do believe they want to dismantle the police, but I believe that they want to replace it. I think that they want things to get so bad and people to live in so much fear that once again the government creates a problem, and then the government has a solution to the problem. I think they want to nationalize the police force. I think that they want the police force not to have its individual jurisdictions and elected sheriffs and police departments that are able to act autonomously. We know in Florida they're able to do a fantastic job. They're supported by their governor.
Right.
I think they want to nationalize police so that they take away that control and that independence from individual departments or individual entities, and I think they want to nationalize it. And I think that to me is their end goal. I think that they want to take control, and so that they can decide what law enforcement looks like.
Well, and we've already seen the way this works with the weaponization of the Department of Justice and the FBI. Now, remember, I worked for 34 years as a police officer. I worked with, in fact, I was in charge of a federal task force, and so I worked intimately with the FBI, and I had great respect for the people that I worked with. But they were street-level FBI agents, and they were as dedicated to the law enforcement mission as me and my team were. But I have seen, and I got to tell you, it frightens me, because I know about power. I know that it can corrupt, and that old adage of absolute power corrupting absolutely is as true could be. So when you have lawlessness at the highest levels of government, where the Department of Justice has the mandate to do something about it and doesn't, where the highest levels of FBI appear to be politically motivated in the investigations that they do. I mean, the fact that it came out in public, FBI came out and said, we're not actively investigating these Hamas, basically terrorists who are
Right.
all over this nation, closing down campuses. If they're really truly not investigating, that should frighten every American, because that is their job. And that's the federal government is here to protect the people. They have abandoned that for political purposes. So when you talk about nationalization, we saw this beginning under the Obama administration. We saw this attempts to, and I agree with you. I believe that if they had the power to nationalize the police, it would devastate this country. It would truly become a police state.
It'd be like the FBI and the IRS kind of rolled into one, and they would go after who they want to go after.
Right.
Donald Trump's the beginning. When people say Donald Trump's the beginning, Donald Trump truly is, in many people's minds, the beginning. He's what's standing in the way of this greater goal. And that's why I see the culmination of all of this. But I know that you're working tirelessly with the Wounded Blue, and I know you guys have been working for years on advocating for police officers, and not only for the job that they're doing, but also the mental health aspects. And you guys have been doing a fantastic job helping thousands and thousands of officers. I've been able to see it firsthand, and I'm so humbled to have been a part of it. But what do you guys have coming up for Police Week, and what are you guys doing to give back to these officers that so desperately need some advocacy?
You know, the physical attacks on law enforcement have been, I mean, the numbers are astounding. Last year, 378 police officers were shot in the line of duty. And we are right now at this stage where we're just started May, it's going to exceed that number. And that's just the number of officers who were shot.
Right.
We're up to 57 killed in the line of duty so far this year. We've had some of the deadliest days in law enforcement history in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. 4 law enforcement officers killed, 4 more injured. The next day, 2 were shot in the same incident. The day before that, 3 officers shot in the same incident. So we're seeing the number of physical injuries dramatically increase, but also the number of psychological and emotional injuries. And much of it has to do with just what we've been talking about, with the demonization, with these officers feeling like, why am I doing this job? What am I doing this for? And so you see, I mean, I see it literally every single day, Tommy. I see it on the faces of our cops. I hear it in their voices when they contact the Wounded Blue and they say, I don't know if I can take this anymore. And you know, we're holding our National Law Enforcement Survival Summit, which is one of the most incredible conferences for law enforcement. It's going to be in September in Las Vegas. And it teaches, it gives the skills to these officers how to survive their careers, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, and relationships and all the things that get torn apart under the immense pressures that they're facing. So, you know, National Police Week begins next week. And this is like the holy week for law enforcement, because this is when 30 to 40,000 police officers will gather in Washington, D.C. I'll be there all week. And this is where the names of every officer who died in the line of duty last year will be unveiled on the monument, which is in the center of Washington. There will be a candlelight vigil on the grounds there that will, if you can't be moved by the sight of 20 to 30,000 American law enforcement officers in their full dress uniforms, holding their candles aloft in the darkness while the names of their brothers and sisters who've been killed in the line of duty are being read aloud, well, then you need to get a heart, because it's amazing. It's at the same time it is so reflective, and that's why the Wounded Blue is playing such an important role. Because I'll have my whole team there, and we will be doing peer support. My entire team. I know you know this, Tommy, but for those viewers, my entire team is made up of police officers who have been shot, stabbed, beaten, run over. I have guys who've been blinded. I have women who are in wheelchairs, and yet they continue to serve, because service is in their life. It's in their DNA. And so even though many of these have faced incredible physical disabilities, they're giving back. They're saving the lives of their brothers and sisters by providing the peer support. We've gotten police officers millions of dollars in benefits that they didn't even know that they had coming to them. That's how critical a role the Wounded Blue plays. And we're a nationwide charity. And you know, here's something that I always have to put out there, because we are all suspicious of charities. We know where's that money going. And I want you to know, and I want your viewers to know, I take no money leading this charity. I live on my pension, and I'm fine with that. And we need to be able to trust the leadership of our charitable organizations, as well as, you know, the mission.
Well, I've watched Wounded Blue do such great things, and I know that you guys have something that's kind of special for Nashvillians in Music City. You have a guitar program. So quickly tell me about that, because I think people are, you know, excited to see that kind of cross section.
Well, I'm so excited. I mean, I love Nashville. I mean, when I first came here to be on your show this a couple of years ago, and I was introduced to this city, I fell in love immediately. But when country music stars, such as Dierks Bentley, Winona, Travis Tritt, Toby Keith, even before he died. They all came together and said, "How can we help?" And I've got some really good friends here in Nashville who are in the music industry, country music industry, who said, "You know what? I've got an idea." And we raised at a concert in Huntsville that Nancy Jones, George Jones's widow, we raised more than $80,000 for 2 Huntsville police officers.
Wow, yeah.
By country stars signing guitars. So they came up with the idea, let's do it again. And so now Guitars for Cops, that's the guitars, the number 4 cops.com, and more country artists have signed on. I mean, just a couple days ago, Ricky Skaggs signed a bunch of guitars.
Oh, that's amazing.
And Vince Gill signed a bunch of guitars. And what they're doing is they are showing the law enforcement community throughout this nation that the people of country music care.
And
not only does that raise money for the Wounded Blue, they're $1,000 a piece. You get a guitar signed by your favorite star, but it shows the emotional connection because the morale of the police officers in this country need a boost. And when you see some of the biggest names in country music say, "I'm going to show my support, and here's a guitar with my name on it to help raise money for injured and disabled officers," well, that has an effect that's far and above just raising money. It's about raising the heart of these people.
To know that there are people in the public eye that openly and proudly support law enforcement officers.
Absolutely, yeah.
So many things the Wounded Blue is doing. You know, congratulations to the Wounded Blue and Police Week coming up. You know, we don't take that lightly, what you guys go through, and we celebrate you and we honor you, and I do believe the silent majority has your back. Randy, thanks so much as always for doing what you do and letting me be a part of the Wounded Blue. I always so much appreciate it.
Well, you have been a staunch supporter of law enforcement literally since the beginning.
Since the beginning.
And believe me, every cop in America knows that too.
Well, I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much, Randy, for being here.
Thank you.
And best of luck to all of you guys, and congratulations on everything that you're doing with the Wounded Blue. All right, folks, Joe Biden's popularity is sinking with young people, both the pro-terror ones and the normal ones, but not to fear. He has an army of influencers who understand their assignment. It's time for Final Thoughts. So Joe Biden's poll numbers are sinking across, well, pretty much every single demo he needs to win in order to beat Donald Trump. When it comes to young people, Joe is upside down. Even a CNN poll shows Joe 11 percentage points behind Donald Trump among voters, 18 to 34. And apparently his strategy of courting the little terrorist wing of the party ain't working out so hot, because not only have they dubbed him Genocide Joe, 71% disapprove of his handling of the Israel-Hamas war, and that number jumps to 81% disapproval for those under 35. Young people see Joe Biden as a failure, and while it would seem it's just the little terrorists who are dragging down his numbers, that's actually not so. As a group, young people don't list Gaza or even climate change as a top concern. They care about what we all care about, inflation and the failure of Joe's economic policy. But Joe's team has a plan for that. Send in the influencers. Their new coordinated organic strategy is to have their mini minions post selfies and add this text formula. I am so-and-so from so-and-so. I am this many years old, and I'm voting for Joe in November. Again, when the Bible tells us the meek will inherit the earth, this is not what our Lord and Savior is referring to. Rather, these are paid influencers. Most of them are being paid off by Priorities USA, a Biden-supporting PAC, of course. And that PAC is spending $1 million for this so-called creator program. But it's so cheesy and so disingenuous, it actually hurts to look at. All of these influencer posts, for the most part, are so phony and contrived, I swear they just cut and paste whatever talking point email they received and they post it up. But truth is, no one is excited about Joe Biden. Those who act like they are either paid to do so, or in the case of Gavin Newsom, are just circling Joe's old bag of bones carcass until he quits, dies, or both. And that, my friends, is the Democrat Party in a nutshell. But at least they've got that mail-in voting thing down. Those are my final thoughts. Reminder that starting Monday, May 13th, this show will stream live at 1 p.m. Eastern, 5 days a week. Until then, from Nashville, God bless and take care.